Uh, uh. How we doing, folks? Doug Rice, the official Twidware representative in the Americas and across the globe. How are you? My name is Doug Rice. Look at that gear. Look at that. We're going to get updated images in here. We're going to talk about the Twidware skincare. We're going to do all of that. Thank you so much for showing up. My name is Doug Rice. Welcome to the Doug Rice Show. Every morning at 8 a.m. I try to be here as on time as possible. I don't know. I do everything I can to make sure I am on the show. And when I pause for the cause, I want to first thank you for being here. It is 8 a.m. on the 14th of November, 2021. I'm still hanging on by a thread. I'm still here. I'm not dead. Despite all that's been said, I can't help you. Don't worry about it. Let me open the show by always saying all praises to the Most High for allowing us to see yet another day where so many have not had it work out that way. And we know the interplay and how it goes on way, way over there. There are lives being lost, if you care, and there are lives that we should care about. I mean, Palestinian, Israeli, have no doubt. Of course, it's all a part of the final curtain. It's the judgment of the Gentile nations for certain. Oh, there we go. I'm landing again early this morning. My name is Doug Rice. Welcome to Doug Rice Show. Like, subscribe, share, visit Twidware right there. And thank you for showing me that you care. All right. Good morning. If I'm working into work or getting you ready for your day, throw me on the bed face up and listen to what I say on the phone. Middle East is going kind of crazy. They just won't get left alone. Listen, let me tell you something I'm finding out. The Israelis attacking these hospitals is justified. That's right. At least in my eyes. That's right. I've done enough investigation, and I can report to the Negro Nation that there are tunnels back and forth throughout the hospitals. The hospital staff is a part of Hamas. It's just a mess. They've got guns, they've got tunnels, they've got this. But you know what? I find it ironic that Israel losing its mind on the Palestinians, and they have the proof of all the horrific, activities that are going on amidst civilians and the casualties and the doctors impersonating Hamas. It's a horrible thing. But to have all the proof in your hand, and just to show people and show people and show, you can imagine how frustrating that must be for the poor Israeli. I know that's got to make you feel real, just empty, they snuck, I believe, the Minister of Defense, one of the brigadier generals of the Israeli IDF into the very epicenter of the melee, the fray. With the CNN, they embedded them that way. And they showed all the proof in the world they needed to justify and go continue unimpeded into the hospitals if needed. But, the world is looking at the results, right? And they don't care about the proof. My goodness, you'd think you didn't get that point. Are you that aloof? Huh? It must be real bad for you Israelis. You got all that, just visual proof. You got documentation. You got recordings of the Hamas in contact with hospital staff. You got guns. You got all the proof in the world that you are doing something that may in fact be justified. But guess what? They still think you lied. How's that feel, Israeli eye? All right, they got global climate happening, unrest all over the place. They're not reporting that they're being flooded and that they're being monsooned and hurricaned. There are two volcanoes going off simultaneously in different ports of the globe. One in, I believe, up there near, the Norwegian area or something like that, and another one somewhere else, but I'll figure that out, but take a look at it. Folks, this truth costs. And in every way, everyone that has something to say is being squeezed at every end. And I am no longer able to pretend I am feeling the same squeeze. So please, if you care to support this show, just look down there so you know where you go to give, so that we can continue to live and continue to deliver to you the information Negroes need. Of course, I can't always rhyme. Sometimes I got to read. Yep, I got stuff here. Twidwear, brand Twidwear, folks. If you're not familiar with the brand that is Twidwear, look right there. There it is. I'll give it all its glory. Oh, I won't even hog any of the story. Twidwear, sports gear, skincare. It's the brand. And let me tell you, folks, we got some pretty good stuffs in development. We definitely want you to try out the skincare products. We're going to get some graphics of those products as soon as there is time. But until then, you'll just have to suffice with my rhyme. Twidwear, twidwear.com. Use TDRS as the promo code. Get 10% off, even off the skincare products designed specifically for Negro melanated skin. Just let it sink in. Yes, I'm just making this stuff as I go along. All right, next. All right, and I also want to welcome to our community, the Doug Rice Show, the one person that has had faith. Our sponsor, Twid himself, is going to be a moderator with the capability of kicking butts in, giving butts time out, banning butts, and just generally saying everything that I might say, because I can't read as I say what I say, and doing this every day. I need 2 moderators, and I got 3 now, because we know that Antoine Anderson is out there somehow. But he works. Antoine Anderson works. He's always loaded, and I don't mean in an inebriated way. You don't want to go to him. Okay, so how's everybody doing? You good? Welcome to the show, 8:07 in the morning. Let's do what we came here for. Let's get into it. Now, you guys know what I do. I provide very valuable, in my opinion, in my mind, PDF files. Rare to find PDFs that can stimulate your mind and leave nothing left. Almost. There's some devastating stuff in writing, the factoids you can't avoid, but we're going to get into this factoid. I think you guys are going to like this. This is something I just couldn't have you miss. What is white privilege really? What is white privilege really? What is it really? Written by Cory Collins back in the fall of 2018. We're going to go through this and see what he means, because you know what? It's a question that's been on my mind. And I'll tell you why. They deny it so well. You kind of want to, you almost can't tell if there is a solid definition of what white privilege is. And so this man has taken the initiative, and let's get down to biz. All right. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, share. I know it's early in the morning. That's why I'm here. I'm only getting the folks that rise early in the morning, the folks that meet the sun when it's dawning, because those are the minds that I want to stimulate before it gets too dadgum late. No, I'm just joking. This is what time I do it in the morning. All right, here we go, folks. So this was written by Cory Collins. Recognizing white privilege begins with truly understanding the term itself. My. Now, let's not go forward. I hope I don't do that, but I did, naturally. Trying to increase the look of things, at least. All right, let's see what we got. What is white privilege really? Oh, I'm learning to do stuff. What is it? Recognizing white privilege begins with truly understanding the term itself. Today, white privilege is often described through the lens of Peggy McIntosh's groundbreaking essay, White Privilege Unpacking the invisible knapsack. Originally published in 1988, the essay helps readers recognize what white privilege by making its effects personal and tangible. For many, white privilege was an invisible force that white people needed to recognize. It was being able to walk into a store and find that the main displays of shampoo and pantyhose were catered toward your hair type and skin tone. It was being able to turn on the television and see people of your race widely represented. It was being able to move through life without being racially profiled or unfairly stereotyped. All true. The idea of white privilege's unseen, unconscious advantages took hold. It became easy for people to interpret McIntosh's version of white privilege, fairly or not, as mostly a matter of cosmetics and inconvenience. Those interpretations overshadow the origins of white privilege, as well as its present-day ability to influence systematic decisions. They overshadow the fact that white privilege is both a legacy and a cause of racism. And they overshadow the words of many people of color who for decades recognized white privilege as the result of conscious acts and refused to separate it from historic inequities. In short, we've forgotten that white privilege, what it really means, which is all of this, all at once. And if we stand behind the belief that recognizing white privilege is integral to the anti-bias work of white educators, we must offer a broader recognition, a recognition that does not silence the voices of those most affected by white privilege, a recognition that does not ignore where it comes from and why it has its staying power. Well, what an opening salvo. I like that. Do tell. So I decided I wanted to read this just to get an idea of what the writer may want to convey. I need you to understand that because this necessarily isn't what I might say. But eat the meat, spit out the bone, leave what you don't accept alone. That's the motto of this show. So let's keep going. Let's go. Racism versus white privilege. Okay. Having white privilege and recognizing it is not racist, but white privilege exists because of historic, enduring racism and biases. Therefore, defining white privilege also requires finding working definitions of racism and bias. So they're going to get into it here. They're going to get into the weeds, into the meat of the matter. Let's see. So what is racism? One helpful definition comes from Matthew Clare and Jeffrey S. Dennis's Sociology on Racism. They define racism as individual and group level processes and structures that are implicated in the reproduction of racial inequality. Systematic racism happens when these structures or processes are carried out by groups with power, such as governments, businesses, or schools. Racism differs from bias, which is a conscious or unconscious prejudice against an individual or group based on their identity. Basically, racial bias is a belief. Racism is what happens when that belief translates into action. For example, a person might unconsciously or consciously believe that people of color are more likely to commit crime or be dangerous. That's a bias. A person might become anxious if they perceive a black person is angry. Well, let me just tell you, that's happened to me. That stems from a bias. These biases can become racism through a number of actions ranging in severity and ranging from individual to group level responses. Now, what you see here, what they're about to show you, I'm looking is, 5 examples of, the group level responses, the biases that become racism through a number of actions. And these actions, I think they'll point out according to their, I don't know, maybe severity, but let's see. A person crosses the street to avoid walking next to a group of young Black men. Yeah, that's happened. That's happened. I've done it. What? I'm not going to deny and I'm not going to lie. I've done it. But, that might be bias. I don't believe I'm racist. Plus, I don't want to have to hurt anybody. I'm just joking. A person calls 911 to report the presence of a person of color who is otherwise behaving lawfully. Now that Karen-esque behavior really chaps my hide. The privilege of white people that can simply get on a phone and call a gun to the scene of what is not a crime. Okay, I'll stop. A police officer shoots an unarmed person of color because he's feared for his life. A jury finds a person of color guilty of a violent crime despite scant evidence. A federal intelligence agency prioritizes investigating Black and Latino activists rather than investigating white supremacist activity. Well, I believe that that's their proclivity. They say with their mouths that white supremacy is gripping the throat of America. They say it far and loud. I mean, they say it, they say it with reports, proof, but it seems they're not able to go directly after these individuals and put them in jail. They seem a bit aloof. But it doesn't stop the free reign for white people acting out and insane, just calling the police on us like they ain't playing, And then we sit there and the cops arrive and the bullets start spraying. Okay, I'll stop. Let's just keep going. Both racism and bias rely on what sociologists call racialization. This is the grouping of a people based on perceived physical differences or such as skin tone. This arbitrary grouping of people historically fueled biases and became a tool for justifying the cruel treatment and discrimination of non-white people. Colonialism, slavery, and Jim Crow laws were all sold with junk science and propaganda that claimed people of a certain race were fundamentally different from those of another, and they should be treated accordingly. And while not all white people participated directly in this mistreatment, their learned biases and their safety from such treatment led many to commit one of the most powerful actions: silence. Folks, I'm going to say that with them: silence. Silence is a killer. Silence is what allows, permits. Silence gives permission to do and to commit. Think of what I'm talking about. You guys see me, I'm on my social media platforms. I mean, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. You all know exactly where I am. And if I begin my diatribe, if I begin to talk to my guys, and suddenly we get an intrusive invader that thinks that they can scold the creator, me. It's just interesting. They seem to have this tone as if we can't be left alone. Just in our business, nonstop caucasity. Why don't they let it drop? Bias and racism, huh? Let's continue. I'm sorry. I drift. Thought you might need a lift. All right. All right. Here. So colonialism, slavery, Jim Crow laws, where I've said that already, right? Silence, right? And just like that, I'm back where I'm at. The trauma, displacement, and cruel treatment and discrimination of people of color inevitably give birth to what we call white privilege. So, what is white privilege exactly? Let's take a closer look, shall we? White privilege is, perhaps most notably in this era of uncivil discourse, a concept that has fallen victim to its own connotations. The two-word term packs a double whammy that inspires pushback. The word white creates discomfort amongst those who are not used to being defined or described by their race. And two, the word privilege, especially for poor and rural white people, sounds like a word that doesn't belong to them, like a word that suggests they've never struggled. This defensiveness derails the conversation, which means, unfortunately, that defining white privilege must often begin with defining what it's not. Otherwise, only the choir listens. The people you actually want to reach, check out. White privilege is not the suggestion that white people have never struggled. Many white people do not enjoy the privileges that come with relative affluence, such as food security. Many do not experience the privileges that come with access, such as nearby hospitals. And white privilege is not the assumption that everything a white person has accomplished is unearned. Most white people who have reached a high level of success worked extremely hard to get there. Instead, white privilege should be viewed as a built-in advantage, separate from one's level of income or effort. Francis E. Kendall, author of Diversity in the Classroom and Understanding White Privilege, Creating Pathways to Authentic Relationships Across Race. Come on! That's a title? Comes close to giving us an encompassing definition, having greater access to power and resources than people of color in the same situation do. But in order to grasp what this means, it's also important to consider how the definition of white privilege has changed over the years. All right, well, let's just expose all their fears. So white privilege, we now have defined it. I think it deserves defining. I mean, so many who are accused of white privilege take umbrage to the accusation without full understanding of its meaning. And so it's good that we are finding out and reading. Now, you can like, subscribe, and share this effort. You can also, if you'd like, give right down there this effort. You can do all of that. You don't have to just stare or listen. Hey, give and maybe my eyes will glisten. No, I'm just joking. I don't know. I've spoken. Next! All right, let's continue. White privilege through the years. In a thorough article, education researcher Jacob Bennett tracked the history of, of the term. Before the Civil Rights Acts of 1964, white privilege was less commonly used, but generally referred to legal and systematic advantages given to white people by the United States, such as citizenship, the right to vote, or the right to buy a house in the neighborhood of their choice. Well now, okay, that's a nice little opening salvo to this section. It was only after discrimination persisted for years, after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that people like Peggy McIntosh began to view white privilege as being more psychological, a subconscious prejudice perpetrated by white people's lack of awareness that they held this power. White privilege could be found in day-to-day transactions and in white people's ability to move through the professional and personal worlds with relative ease. But some people of color continue to insist that an element of white privilege included the after effects of conscious choices. For example, if white business leaders didn't hire many people of color, white people had more economic opportunities. Having the ability to maintain that power dynamic in itself was a white privilege, and it endures. Legislative bodies, corporate leaders, and educators are still disproportionately white and often make conscious choices, laws, hiring practices, discipline procedures that keep this cycle on repeat. The more complicated truth: white privilege is both unconsciously enjoyed and consciously perpetuated. It is both on the surface and deeply embedded into American life. It is a weightless knapsack and a weapon, of course, depending on who's carrying it. All right, folks. Wow. All right. This is going there somehow. I do enjoy your being with us today. I enjoy you listening to what I say. I also hope and I also pray that you support what I'm doing. Here's the reason why. The situation is getting ruinous, but I'm also relying on the Creator to come through in this. This is why now I'm doing this full time. It's there are a lot of issues that have come to mind. So do me a favor, folks, take that to heart. And if you would, please do your part. Please support the Doug Rice Show and buy from Twidware too, Okay, I'm done. Next, white privilege as the power of normal. Sometimes the examples used to make white privilege visible to those who have had it are also the examples least damaging to people who lack it. But that does not mean these examples do not matter or that they do not damage at all. These subtle versions of white privilege are often used as a comfortable, easy entry point for people who might push back against the concept. That is why they remain so popular. These are simple, everyday things, conveniences white people aren't forced to think about. Now, these often used examples include the first aid kit having flesh-colored Band-Aids that only match the skin tone of white people. Whoa, go ahead and let that one sink in for a minute, huh? Next, the products white people need for their hair being in the aisle labeled hair care, rather than in a smaller separate section of ethnic hair care products. Let's make some progress. The grocery store stocking a variety of food options that reflects the cultural traditions of most white people. But the root of these problems is often ignored. These types of examples can be dismissed by white people who might say, my hair is curly and requires a special product, or my family is from Poland and it's hard to find traditional Polish food at the grocery store. Yeah, okay, sure. This may be true, but the reason even these simple white privileges need to be recognized is that the damage goes beyond the inconvenience of shopping for goods and services. These privileges are symbolic of what we might call the power of normal. If public spaces and goods seem catered to one race and segregate the needs of people of other races into special sections, that indicates something beneath the surface. White people become more likely to move through the world with an expectation that their needs be readily met. People of color move through the world knowing their needs are on the margins. Recognizing this means recognizing where the gaps exist. Well, my goodness, might I persist? Yes! What an interesting dynamic I hadn't even considered. So they're being programmed to have the attitude of privilege. Seriously, they're being somehow conditioned to see their forward position, but only by attrition. They'll learn the volition. I'm sorry, I'm doing what I do. What do you want me to do? You want me to stop? You want to stop? I won't stop. I will never stop. Okay, let's go. All right, let's continue with the show. All right. White privilege is the power of the benefit of the doubt. Oh, let me repeat that so I can shout. White privilege, you hear me? As the power of the benefit of the doubt. Oh, let me give this full screen. The power of normal goes beyond the local CVS. White people are also more likely to see positive portrayals of people who look like them on the news, on TV shows, and in the movies. They are more likely to be treated as individuals rather than representatives of or exceptions to a stereotyped racial identity. In other words, they are more often humanized and granted the benefit of the doubt. They are more likely to receive compensation, to be granted individual potential, to survive mistakes. Damn! Who wrote this? Oh, for goodness sakes. This has negative effects for people of color who, without this privilege, face the consequences of racial profiling, stereotypes, and lack of compassion for their struggles. In these scenarios, white privilege includes the fact that, here we go, white people are less likely to be followed, interrogated, or searched by law enforcement because they look suspicious. Don't look suspicious. Don't look suspicious. White people's skin tone will not be a reason people hesitate to trust their credit or financial responsibility. Yeah, that's true. If white people are accused of a crime, they are less likely to be presumed guilty, less likely to be sentenced to death, and more likely to be portrayed in a fair, nuanced manner by media outlets. Yeah, they are. Now, the personal faults or missteps of white people likely not be used later to deny opportunities or compassion to people who share their racial identity. And I got to say, and stop there just for a moment, that is such truly spoken wording. And they wear it, but it's almost like, as I said, an invisible knapsack. Something they're not even aware that they possess or carry. It's just something they feel, they can go through the world without a vary. But that's not true. I mean, we see this too. And I hope you like, subscribe, share this, but sharing is very, very important. I'm sure you guys who are on your way to work, you might find a friend or two to, kind of share this too. Who knows? They might learn a third thing or two before it's through. I don't know. Who knows? Let's get next. Hold on. Ooh. Next. Here we go. This privilege is invisible to many white people because it seems reasonable that a person should be extended compassion as they move through the world. It seems logical that a person should have the chance to prove themselves individually before being judged. It's supposedly an American ideal, but it's a privilege often not granted to people of color, and with dire consequences, I might add. Yeah, I read that. I wrote that myself. For example, programs like New York City's now abandoned stop and frisk policy target a disproportionate number of Black and Latinx people. People of color are more likely to be arrested for drug offenses despite using at a similar rate to white people. Some people do not survive these stereotypes. In 2017, people of color who were unarmed and not attacking anyone were more likely to be killed by police. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys know what I feel about that term, people of color and Latinx and all that. I understand. I read somewhere a man wrote, "Let the Negro fight his own battles. We have nothing to do with the Negro battles." That was back in 1964. I don't even need to hear no more. Y'all know who said that because I posted it. You hear me? So I don't need to hear Latinx. I don't need to hear people of color. Let me explain. See, when they stop people that are kind of brown skinned, people of color, they don't hear what comes out of their mouth, so they don't have any idea that they're Latino. Please stop with that shit. Okay? What they're doing is they're just mistaking you for a Negro because they got it in for us. They got it in for you. You remind them of us. And when that happens, well, that's your behind. And thus it's over. But don't just seem to just roll over the fact that it's about the Negroes that's where it's at. Okay? Because that's who they're after. All right? I've seen too many of you with them in laughter. Don't act like you on my side, please. Next! All right, let's continue. Sorry, folks. Those who survive instances of racial profiling, be they subtle or violent, do not escape unaffected. They often suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, and this trauma in turn affects their friends, their families, immediate communities who are exposed to their own vulnerability as a result. Oh, I am going to stop there because that's interesting. You know, you think about the trauma put upon Negroes in their own communities, and you know what they do? They leave those Negroes there among us. And as the trauma sinks in and sinks in and seeps into their psyche, that, you know, it may be that one of them might take it out on one of us as a direct result of an interaction between police or between some other outside force that created that. And you know, I think it's a testimony that he's pointing this out. I like this reading. Please like, subscribe, and share. Yes, I like this. A study conducted in Australia, which has its own hard history of subjugating Black and indigenous people, perfectly illustrates how white privilege can manifest in day-to-day interactions. Daily reminders that one is not worthy of the same benefit of the doubt given to another. In the experiment, people of different racial and ethnic identities tried to board public buses, telling the driver they didn't have enough money to pay for the ride. Researchers documented more than 1,500 attempts. The result? 72% of white people were allowed to stay on the bus. Only 36% of Black people were extended that same kindness. My goodness, all they have to do is remind us, huh? You know, all they got to do is remind us. And you think about that statistic, because it's not just altruistic. It's not unrealistic. It's actual. It happened. It's factual. This is what's on their mind. Listen to me. Don't sit here and grin and cheese and massa please with these individuals. Don't you know what's on their minds as they sit there and smile back at you? Don't you know that if it was up to them, every last one of us would be through? If they had their druthers, there wouldn't be no other. And you know I'm telling the truth. Let's go. All right. Just as people of color did nothing to deserve this unequal treatment, white people did not earn the disproportionate access to compassion and fairness. They receive it as the byproduct of systematic racism and bias. 72%, they let them ride a damn bus. 36% of Negroes, Black people, people of color, whatever you want to call them in Australia, I don't care, that remind them of what they've done. You know what every Black person reminds them of? They put Negroes into slavery. It was all a conspiracy, and I consider it somewhat unsavory. That's right. And even if they are not aware of it in their daily lives as they walk along the streets, this privilege is the result of conscious choices made long ago and choices still being made today. White privilege is the power, accumulated power. Power of cumulative power. Power of accumulated power. Perhaps the most important lesson about white privilege is the one that's taught the least. The power of normal and the power of the benefit of the doubt of not just subconscious byproducts of past discrimination. They are the purposeful results of racism and aurora boreas of sorts that allow for the constant recreation of inequality. These powers would not exist if systematic racism hadn't come first. And systematic racism cannot endure unless those powers still hold sway. You can imagine it as something of a whiteness water cycle, wherein racism is the rain. The rain populates the earth, giving some areas more access to life and resources than others. The evaporation is white privilege, an invisible phenomenon. It is both a result of the rain and the reason it keeps going. Dear God, that was absolutely phenomenal, wasn't it? My God, that was good. What an analogy. Like, subscribe, and share this one. I like this one. That is a hell of an analogy right there. I mean, it's almost worth reading over. I'm going to. Yes, you can imagine white privilege. You can imagine it as something of a whiteness water cycle, wherein racism is the rain racism is the rain. That racist rain populates the earth. It spreads throughout the entire globe. In some areas, more access to life and resources than others. That rain is deeply embedded within the soil of the populace of the planet. But that evaporation is that white privilege, an invisible phenomenon that is both a result of the rain and the reason for its perpetration. That is amazing. I like that, folks. I like well-written stuff, and that's no joke. McIntosh asked herself an important question that inspired her famous essay, White Privilege Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack on a Daily Basis. What do I have that I didn't earn? Woo! How about what do I know that I didn't learn? Our work should include asking the two looming follow-up questions. Who built that system and who keeps it going? The answers to those questions could fill several books, but they produce examples of white privilege that you won't find in many broad explainer pieces. For example, the ability to accumulate wealth has long been a white privilege, a privilege created by overt, systematic racism in both the public and private sectors. Did you hear that? In 2014, the Pew Research Center released a report that revealed the median net worth of a white household was $141,900 for white households, and for Black and Hispanic households, the median wealth gap drops $11,000, $13,700 respectively. Do you understand those numbers? Do you understand the numbers that the median net worth means the average of a white household of $141,900, and for Black and Hispanic households, Black being first mentioned, comparative to the white household of making $141,900 goddamn dollars a fucking year? I said I wouldn't curse, but you need to protect your ears. All the way down to 11 grand for Black people. That's the median net wealth. That is it. Median net worth. Black household, 11,000 annually. The median net worth of a white household, 141,900 annually. Hispanics, well, they get $2,700 more, and I got something to say about that. I'm just joking. I mean, folks, what are these folks smoking that somehow want to subjugate themselves to the white establishment? We have folks like Tim Scott. We got folks like Tim Scott that paraded on the stage, just something that just drew all kinds of white rage. And he got checked out of the presidential race. And they didn't want that brother in their face. I mean, I look at those numbers, $141,900 to $11,000 and $13,700, man, and that just chaps my heart. That's conditioned. That's a programmed. That isn't an intentional thing, man. That's not by chance. That's not fair play. There's no pull yourself up by your bootstraps at hand there. There's no you're just lazy and you can't do the work. There's a lot more involved in that jerk from 141.9 to 11. You got to be out your mind. Y'all need to think about that before you go out smiling. You go out moving and grooving and styling. Y'all need to consider that. All right, let's go. Wow. Negro. The gap is huge, and the great equalizers don't narrow it. Research from Brandeis University in Demos found that the racial wealth gap is not closed when people of color attend college. The median white person who went to college has 7.2 times more wealth than the median Black person who went to college, and 3.9 times more than the median Latino person who went to college, and nor do they close the gap when they work full-time or when they spend less and save more. You can't win! Isn't that what she said to Rocky? Say it again. Y'all still grinning? If I feel or think that you got a smile on your face, you need to depart this place. I mean that. Because ain't a goddamn thing funny. The gap instead relies largely on inheritance. Wealth passed from one generation to the next, and that wealth often comes in the form of inherited homes with value. When white families are able to accumulate wealth because of their earning power or home value, they are more likely to support their children into early adulthood, helping with expenses such as college education, first cars, and first homes. The cycle continues. This is a privilege denied to many families of color, a denial that started with the work of public leaders and property managers. I want you to pay particularly attention to this because this needs to be paid attention to. After World War II, when the GI Bill provided white veterans with a magic carpet to the middle class, racist zoning laws segregated towns and cities and sizable populations of people of color. From Baltimore to Birmingham, from New York to St. Louis, from Louisville to Oklahoma City to Chicago to Austin, and in the cities and in between. You need to hear this and you better understand what I mean. The exclusionary zoning practices evolved from city ordinances to redlining by the Federal Housing Administration, which wouldn't back loans to Black people or those who lived close to Black people, to more insidious techniques written into building codes. The result? People of color weren't allowed to raise their children and invest their money in neighborhoods with high home value. The cycle continues today. Before the 2008 crash, people of color were disproportionately targeted for subprime mortgages. And neighborhood diversity continues to correlate with low property values across the United States. According to the Century Foundation, 1/4 of Black Americans living in poverty live in high poverty neighborhoods. Only 1 in 13 impoverished white Americans lives in a high poverty neighborhood. Now, listen closely and listen good. About that World War II thing, you need to hear this so your ears break. See, you need to understand the impact of that. You need to understand the gravitas of that situation. Once Negroes fought in World War II for this nation, not only did they come home, if they found with their uniforms on, they'd get hung by trees malevolently by these white ideologists and societies, like the Klan, you understand. But more than that, to be denied that stepping stone in the middle class, to not help Black people elevate their ass, to just deny GI bills. Fuck all the thrills. Fuck the frills, just the GI Bill itself. And this was done by the Federal Housing Administration in concordance with the government of this nation to deny Negroes to rise above their station. And that impact is felt deeply in the 80s, deeply in the 2000s, from the 60s. I mean, it generationally jumps 20 years. You better understand and bring your ear near. This ain't no joke. When they denied Negroes the right to buy houses after World War II, that should have been the final slap in our Black faces. There's no reason to put a grin on our Black faces in public places. I mean that should wipe it clean. That should do it done, seriously. I mean, you need to look at every last one of them with a serious countenance. Just think of that fact, and you'll surmount it. You'll surmount that grin. they need to be looked at seriously because they're seriously fucked up people. You need to understand what's on their minds. That's why I'm reading this today. All right. That's all I got to say. Let's continue. All right, so the inequities compound. To this day, more than 80% of poor black students attend a high poverty school where suspension rates are often higher and resources often more limited. Once out of school, obstacles remain. Economic forgiveness and trust still has racial divides. In the University of Wisconsin study, 17% of white job applicants with a criminal history got a call back. That's right. And according to the National Bureau of Economic Research, black Americans are 105% more likely than white people to receive a high-cost mortgage, with Latino Americans 78% more likely. This is after controlling more for variables such as credit score and debt-to-income ratios. Why mention these issues in an article defining white privilege? Because the past and present context of wealth inequity serves as a perfect example of white privilege. If privilege, from the Latin root of the term, refers to the law that have an impact on individuals, then what is more effective than a history of laws that explicitly targeted racial minorities to keep them out of neighborhoods and deny them access to wealth and services? What's more, if white privilege is having greater access to power and resources than people of color in the same situation do, then what is more exemplary than the access to wealth, the access to neighborhoods, and the access to the power to segregate cities, deny loans, and perpetuate these systems? This example of white privilege also illustrates how systematic inequities trickle down to less harmful versions of white privilege. Wealth inequity contributes to the power of the benefit of the doubt. Every time a white person is given the lower mortgage rate than a person of color with the same credit credentials, wealth inequity reinforces the power of normal. Every time businesses assume their most profitable consumer base is the white base and adjust their products accordingly. And this example of white privilege serves as an important purpose. It recenters the power of conscious choices in the conversation about what white privilege is. So let me stop for just a moment for the show. I am brought to you by Twidwear, as you can see. Got some of the Twid gear on. Look at me, all right? I have to remind you, I've got to do it, that Twidwear supports this effort through sponsorship, and I would hope you support Twidwear through purchase. So again, you use the promo code TDRS and you go to twidwear.com. You know to do the rest. You'll be able to purchase some of the best apparel and skincare products. And remember, it's owned by a woke Negro, operated. And so why not a woke Negro, I don't know, shout about it and try to make a profit with it? I'm working it out. All right. Just, it's what I do. All right, there we go. So I wanted to stop for that cause. It's 8:53 in the morning. I'm going to keep going until I just continue, till I can't read anymore because it's just too good information. Like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. If you're in Facebook, if you're a Facebook watcher, do me a favor, share this on your social media platforms and on all the pages that you follow that associate themselves with the Negro experience in America. See, I can do it too. All right, let's go. We're nowhere near through. All right, here we go. People can be ignorant about these inequities, of course. According to the Pew Research, only 46% of white people say that they benefit a great deal or a fair amount from advantages that society does not offer to black people. But conscious choices were and are made to uphold these privileges. And this goes beyond loan officers and lawmakers. Multiple surveys have shown that many white people support the idea of racial equality, but are less supportive of policies that could make it more possible, such as reparations, affirmative action, or law enforcement reform. In that way, white privilege is not just the power to find what you need in a convenience store or to move through the world without your race defining your interactions. It's not just the subconscious comfort of seeing a world that serves you as normal. It's also the power to remain silent in the face of racial inequity. It's the power to weigh the need for protest or confrontation against the discomfort or inconvenience of speaking up. It's getting to choose when and where you want to take a stand. It's knowing that you and your humanity are safe. That is what privilege is. Tell me that's not the last page. Dear God. And this is all the rage. My God, I didn't think I'd read it all. My goodness. All right, well, that is it, folks. Good Lord, 9 pages. 9 pages. That's pretty good. I sometimes struggle through 5. But it's good to know that I've kept my voice alive because I'll need it later today. What more can I say? Again, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for lending me your Negro ear. That's the Doug Rice Show morning show. There's a lot more Doug Rice Show to go, all right? I'm going to be doing 10-minute moments. I'm going to be doing interviews. I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff because we just can't lose. All right, thanks for showing up. Thanks for tuning in. And you guys understand, don't just come here for the grin, all right? Come here for the information too. We got PDFs to provide for you. That is 100% true. We do have PDFs, all right? And I got a whole bunch of them left because electronic and I got an endless amount. I read through this stuff and the amount I can't even count, but for donation levels, you'll get a certain amount in response and reply. And just email me, the Doug Rice Show at gmail.com. You can donate at Cash App, the Doug Rice Show, the little $. Fundly.com, the Doug Rice Show, Patreon / the Doug Rice Show. And I'm going to have to make a Venmo, the Doug Rice Show. I also have Rumble. But the anchor of this effort is fueled by Twitware. As you can see, I have Twitware on right there, okay? And the reason I think it's important that we support each other is because there is no other that will support us. No other supports us. And when I look at Palestine and I look at all these folks who have it on their mind, I kind of have to remind them that the Arab transatlantic slave trade, that whole deal, there's a lot of money they made. And so we don't take sides. We just reside and kind of side-eye, look by. All right, that's what we do. All right, we're done and we're through. I'm good. It's 8:58. I've been going on. It's almost too late. All right, folks, you guys go. And that's the Doug Rice Show. I am out of here. Again, thanks again for your ear. Try not to hurt yourselves on the way out. And when you go to work, make sure you keep yourself serious-minded. Be a serious-minded Negro, folks, please. Do not grin and cheese. Try not to appease. All right, that's the Doug Rice Show. Get that goddamn grin off your face, yo.